It is Tuesday, November 24th, the week of Thanksgiving, and this is for Regional Cuisine. We are working in the Midwest states still, so we're going to be making some Ohio Buckeye balls. So it's a candy, peanut butter candy that's dipped in chocolate, right? So that's one of your favorite flavor combinations. These are super easy to make. Few ingredients, right? They chill quickly, dip them in the chocolate. And they're good if they stay nice and cold and refrigerated, okay? So what we're gonna be doing first is measuring out our stuff into the stand mixer, right? So I've got my baby here, right? Those of you who know, I like purple, right? So of course I got a purple mixer. So I've got my KitchenAid set up here with a paddle attachment. You can do this with a hand mixer. Just be careful near the end that the hand mixer doesn't overheat, because this is a really thick, scoopable mixture similar to a cookie dough, okay? So I'm just gonna grab the bowl over here for a minute as I put the ingredients in. And we're going to start off with 2 cups of creamy peanut butter. I've got a little bit of peanut butter here. Juggo peanut butter for today. So just a regular store brand creamy peanut butter is fine. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Okay. And I've got a giant 2-cup measure here. So we're just going to fill one of these up with our peanut butter. And then we're going to start off by mixing the creamy peanut butter for this, like I said, with the paddle attachment, and a half a stick of softened butter, okay? So I've let the butter sit out for a few hours now. It's not melted or anything like that, but it's nice and soft, so it will blend quickly with this creamy peanut butter. So this is a fast recipe, right? If your butter's really cold, it won't mix well, and you'll end up with little chunks of butter in there. It won't be nice and smooth, okay? We don't want that. So we've got our 2-cup measure here full of the creamy peanut butter, and that is going to go into the bowl for the KitchenAid. Like I said, you can do this by hand and stir it. You can use a machine for part of it. Once you start putting this powdered sugar in, you're going to see how thick this gets. Those little electric hand mixers may struggle a bit to handle that, okay? So we've got our 2 cups of peanut butter in there, and we're going to do 1 stick of softened butter. So this has been sitting out, like I said, for a couple of hours at room temperature. If I squish it really hard, it'll soften up pretty fast. So I'm just going to take it, I'm going to throw this whole stick right into the mixing bowl with the peanut butter, okay? And now that's going to go back on the machine and get started mixing. So we're just going to put this on low. A little stir speed action happening here, so nothing, too fast. We just want to get that butter kind of blended in, then I'll turn it up, okay? And one of the key things with this too is remember to scrape the bowl as you do this at different points. So now that we've got the butter in there, I'm going to let that mix together. I'm going to add in a couple ingredients right now. So one of them being 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. So I've got my tablespoon measure. I've got my light brown sugar. And I want to pack that into the spoon. So I'm going to use the package, the bag, to press that in, right? You want a nice pressed spoonful. So we're going to do 2 of those. This way you don't have to get your hands dirty if you use the bag to press it. 1 and 2. And then we're going to need a little bit of vanilla extract. So we're going to do 1 full teaspoon plus a 1/4 teaspoon. So don't forget the 1/4 teaspoon. So we got 1 teaspoon there. And I got my little 1/4 teaspoon. We want to make sure we have enough flavor happening, right? So we've got the peanut butter, we've got our softened butter in there, a couple tablespoons of brown sugar, 1 1/4 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I just want to whip this up just to make sure that it's nice and smooth and well blended. So that's why you want to have a spatula handy. A nice little rubber spatula is helpful. Use the one from the peanut butter. And after you get it mixed for a little bit, I'm just going to scrape this down, make sure there's no chunks of butter or peanut butter that's not mixed in and things. Scrape the sides of your bowl, right? And you'll see that mixture is very light and creamy, okay? But it's going to get to the point where we're going to add in enough powdered sugar that we're going to be able to roll these by hand, okay? So let that mix for a couple of seconds more. And then we're just going to be using a confectioner's sugar, right? Powdered sugar. To make this into like a dough, right? But what it's going to be is it's going to look really dry, but it ends up being a really nice creamy center inside the Buckeye candy. So we're going to turn this down as low as it'll go, okay, because you don't want to wear all the powdered sugar. So whenever you're working with things like this, always at a low speed, otherwise it'll all over the place. So this is going to get 3 1/4 cups of powdered sugar. So 3 full 1 cups, and then a smaller 1/4 of a cup. So same thing, I'm using the bag to scrape off and get a nice level measure, okay. And this is when you want to slowly add that in. So I'm just going to tap it in every time. Okay. So that's 1. I'm going to bring you guys in closer here, just for a look. Okay. So you can see that as it's starting to mix, it's going to start getting thick. Because that's 2 cups there in. Right? You can start to see it's already getting a thick texture to it. It's going to look a lot like a peanut butter cookie dough. Right? Close, but it's not quite. All right, so we're going to do 1 more full cup. You can see my mixer's starting to bounce a little bit, so I'm just going to lock that in place. So that's what lets me know that it's starting to get much thicker consistency. That's why I said that a handheld mixer may struggle to do that. Whereas, you know, if you get to that point, I would finish stirring the rest of it by hand so that you don't burn out your machine. Okay, so then we're going to do, we got 3 full cups in there, and I'm going to do the little 1/4 cup. We want to make sure that this is dry enough to do what we need it to do. Okay. So now that I've got it mixed in, most of the powdered sugar is mixed in, I'm just going to give it a little spin here until you get a nice looking kind of dough texture. So what I'm looking for is for this to start coming together. Okay, so you can see it there. And it's pulling away from the sides of the bowl, right, and forming a ball in the center. So then I know that we're good. Okay. So this is going to be super thick. You can see this, right? I can pick it up and mold it. So we're just going to knock off the extra dough off the paddle here. And this is going to get scooped and rolled because that way it helps keep a nice uniform shape. These are a fast candy to make. Like I said, if you love chocolate peanut butter, that flavor combination, this is super easy to do and can be done ahead. So these will hold up in the fridge for a week, right? So you can make them today, have them for Thanksgiving. Just scraping the sides here. Make sure we get everything down in. Like I said, it's a super thick mixture, okay? Which is what we want. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to start to shape these because they're going to need to get dipped into chocolate. So what I've got back here is my bowl with some candy melts, right? And it's sitting over a pot of water. So we're going to melt that down. We can have some dipping chocolate while we're shaping these. So I'll keep an eye on that behind me to make sure that it just gets melted. And then I'm going to add in to that chocolate about a tablespoon of shortening, right? Crisco shortening. Just like when we did the candy bark a while back. And that's just going to help it melt a little bit more smoothly and coat nicely for the candies. Okay. So for this, we're going to use wax paper this time. So we've been using parchment. We've been using Silpat, right? This is one of those times that you can use the cheaper, less expensive wax paper because it's candy. It's not getting baked, right? This is going to get chilled instead. But the wax paper is a nice non-stick surface, right? So I've got my cookie sheet here, and I've got my wax paper, which makes it easy for cleanup, right? So you don't have to do a bunch of scrubbing. And then we're going to take and use cookie scoop, okay? So this right here will just be like scooping cookie dough. So I'm going to scoop a bunch out, but then I'm going to shape them, hand roll them into little ball shapes. So then that way they're easy to dip, okay? And I've got some I'll be able to swap out with in a few minutes. That's starting to melt. Okay, so when you're scooping this mixture, all right, you really want to press this into the cookie scoop, Okay, and then I'm using the edge of the bowl here to scrape that off so I get an even measurement, right? It doesn't look pretty at the moment, but that's okay because we're going to shape them by hand a little bit. And this makes about 3 dozen Buckeye balls. Okay, so don't worry, you'll have plenty to share if you want to share. If not, just hide them somewhere in the fridge, you know, in like the veggie drawer. Nobody will touch them. So we're going to make a bunch of these while that chocolate's melting. Okay. And the idea of this is that, you know, we scoop it so that they're all uniform in size, right? But we want to get them to be a ball shape, right? So the Buckeye is a nut that has a brown center and a darker outside. So we want to make sure that we're getting that same look as the Ohio Buckeye, right? So in between your hands, you want to just roll them into a smooth ball. And because the peanut butter has so much natural fat to it, it's not going to stick to your hands. Okay? We're just going to space those out. So we're going to get a bunch of these rolled out. And then we're going to be dipping these. So these are best when they're really chilled, okay? Because we need to be able to put a toothpick inside each one to be able to dip them. So the best way to do that is to put them into the freezer, which is where this tray will go. Scoop some more here. And this is really soft because we did have softened butter, right? It's something that it does need that time to get good and cold and to set up. So don't skip that step or you won't be able to dip them nicely into the chocolate. Okay. Another one here, so we'll get a good dozen of them. All right. So we're just going to roll that again just to show you that step again real quick. And that's just to come in your hands, right? And get them into a nice smooth ball shape. It's like rolling meatballs. So if you've ever made homemade meatballs, it's good practice for this. Now what I'm looking for is for my chocolate to be nice and melted and liquid. It's getting there. Starting to melt now, so give that another minute or so. We'll scoop a few more. And then I'm going to show you how to put the toothpicks into there. You want to get them right in the center. Okay. And that will give us a little handle for dipping. Okay. Like I said, so it's just rolling them out. Make sure we have enough to show later. There you go. Okay. So now when we get to this point, we need to put a toothpick inside each one. So if you're doing multiple batches, you can reuse your toothpicks. Okay. Just for this, but I wouldn't reuse them for other things. Okay. But we do have a box here of just plain round toothpicks, nothing fancy, right? Just nice skinny ones. And these are going to go in a little more than halfway in the center of each one. Right? And this, like I said, this is going to be our chocolate dipping handle. We're going to be taking these out after, so you won't know that they were even there. Okay. But this is just going to make it easier for that dipping process. But we need these to get set up nice and firm as well, so that they don't fall off the toothpick. Okay. And we don't want them to be so warm and gooey like they are now that they will melt the second that the warm chocolate touches them. All right. So that's all the candy setup that you need to do. Right. I am watching my chocolate here. So I've got the bowl on the stove. See that it's getting a little too hot. So I just turned the heat down on this. If your bowl starts to get a little too warm, just pull it away from the pan. Let that pan cool down for a second. Give your chocolate a good stir. Right. We're letting that little tablespoon's worth of Crisco melt in. This was about a pound of those candy melts. Some companies sell them in 12-ounce packages. That's fine, right? And you just add more if you need more. You add more chocolate to the bowl. Okay, so it's starting to get melted. Not quite there. heated in them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap these ones out for some that I've had in the freezer for the last half hour. So these are the chilled Buckeyes. And this is why we chill them. For that purpose right there, right? So that way we have a nice little handle. This tray gets super cold from being in the freezer. So this will help it stay cold. And once we dip them and set them in the chocolate, we can send them right back down on the same tray. That chocolate will start to set up quickly too, because this tray is super cold and chilled. Okay. We just move a couple things out of the way here. We need to have some space for our chocolate bowl. Get it clean as you go. So candy making is something that is always on the messy side, right? It's not something that's a clean job, especially when you're working with chocolate. Hence why I put on a dark apron, right? To stop from getting chocolate splatters on things. So wear an apron. Don't wear your finest clothes. Something dark colored. This chocolate is hard to get out. You can see I'm starting to get now that nice drizzle to it. I still get some good sized chunks in there. So I'm just giving this a good stir to get those broken up. And I'm going to keep this pan of water on a low heat. So if this starts to get too thick, I can just quickly put the bowl back to pot of water and start to melt it and soften it back up. Okay, so I'm just going to put a towel down on my counter. And the bowl's not even really that hot, which is good. So now we've got some melted chocolate, right? This is the good stuff. Now, other tools that you may want to have handy is a spoon to help scoop, or a spatula to help spoon the chocolate onto the candy a little bit, and a fork to help transfer it over. So it's like having an extra set of hands. Okay, so we're gonna have both of those there. So with these, to make that Buckeye, you're gonna dip everything except for this very top piece up here. You still want to be able to see some of the peanut butter, so don't dip it all the way in. So I'm just gonna drop this down in. And when you've got a lot of chocolate in there, you won't need things like a spoon, okay? But drag it on the edge of the bowl to catch any drips. Let's put that towards the front so you can see a little bit better. And just let that set. And that is your Buckeye. When you start to get low on chocolate, you can use your spoon to help scoop it up onto the sides of the candy. So you want to have about 2/3 covered in chocolate. So you can still see some of that peanut butter. Remember to scrape the extra off so you don't end up with too much of a puddle at the bottom. Okay. I'll try and tip this bowl over the chocolate so you can see a little bit better here in just a sec. So each one of these, one at a time, right? Like I said, I'm just dipping it in there and kind of giving it a little swirl. Letting it come off, okay? Now, when these are all done, you will pull that toothpick out of the center of each one, okay? Well, what you're going to want to do is stick these back in the freezer for about 5-10 minutes to get them fully set up on the chocolate. They're going to set pretty quickly on the bottom because this tray is super cold from it being in the freezer. But you don't want to pull that toothpick out until they're hardened. And then you can just use your fingertip to smooth out the little spot on the top where the toothpick was. Okay, so as long as you've got that chocolate, I said, nice and warm, that little bit of Crisco in there really helps that chocolate be nice and smooth. Okay, and I have a couple of them done right here just to show you. Right, so you can see the finished piece. So once that chocolate fully sets up, right, it makes a nice little bottom, but that is your Ohio Buckeye, right? Nice little candy, super soft, creamy center, great peanut butter flavor. But like I said, these are best if they're kept chilled. Keep them refrigerated. They're good for up to a week, but I doubt they will last that long. So hopefully you guys will make some candies and have something fun to do for Thanksgiving. Okay.